This is a film which was taken by our American friend Joe Brown in 1956 on the Bonneville Salt Flats, when Bob Burns and I were attempting to be the first to break the 200 mile/hour barrier on my world record breaking Vincent Black Lightning motorcycle. Joe was most helpful because along the way we faced many setbacks. The end result of my attempt was one run timed at 198 miles per hour.
Here's one entrance to the Salt Flats owned by the Bonneville Salt Company. The 13-mile straightaway used for high-speed record breaking runs parallel to the Sierra Nevada mountains 30 miles to the north. To the east is a 10-mile circular course for long-distance records. The salt varies from about 10 to 70 centimeters in thickness, and a drag is pulled up and down to smooth it out. Burns and Wright were blessed with fine weather, and if a real wheel were to spin, a rubber would be torn off in a black streak. LSU, on the other hand, had some rain, making the salt very slippery, which prevented them from running for several days. On one run, Hearts hit some wet salt and ran off course into a timing light stand, damaging the fairing. Some of the rainwater collects in a ditch at the side of the road, which becomes dense brine. Large flake crystals of salt are formed. Russell Wright being passed by Werner Haas and the tall Wilhelm Hartz. That's Bob Burns with bag in hand standing next to Delphin 3. This streamliner was designed by Gustav Bohm, who was killed testing a road racing version at the Nürburgring the previous year. It is the early morning of August the 5th, the first time Bob and Russell have appeared on the Salt. They arrived in Wendover the previous day to find NSU celebrating their new world land speed record of 211 miles per hour. Hartz's machine Delphin 3 can accept methanol burning 250, 350 and 500cc twin-cylinder, twin-array camshaft engines, the larger two being supercharged with a prototype Wankel engine. These crates are used to transport the streamliners. Russell Wright and Bob Burns with Herman Muller, the pilot of the Baum streamliner. Happy Muller was a 250 road race world champion the previous year on a Sportsmax single. Some publicity shots of the new world record holder. Hartz was unable to use the full enclosure as his helmet kept hitting the canopy going over the bumps. This increased the drag coefficient by over 25% from 0.18 to 0.23. The black line of old engine oil is used to steer by. Muller in casual clothes preparing for a run. The beautifully streamlined Baum 2 or flying hammock is made of aluminium and a monocoque construction. With its 16-inch disc wheels and an overall height of 72 centimeters, it has a drag coefficient of 0.1 and is powered by either 100 or 125cc Renfox engines. A shorter streamliner, with the rider sitting upright, is a little taller at 81 centimeters and is powered by a supercharged 2-stroke 50cc Quickley engine. A third streamliner, ridden by Hartz, was fitted with a 250 Renfox engine designed by Dr. Freud, seen here in shorts. It developed over 40 brake horsepower at sea level and was said to have a 250 mile/hour potential. All these engines run on methanol. This is a timer stand in the middle of the straightaway. The gusty winds coming from the mountains caused Hartz to crash the Renmax streamliner at over 200 miles per hour. It then slid for over half a mile. Russell Wright went off course on one run and made it back with some difficulty. When Bob and Russell arrived in Wendover, they found that their sponsor in New Zealand had failed to organise anything. Fortunately, they had the use of Joe Brown's trailer, which Russell is altering to take the outfit, and the only accommodation they could find was in this hut in what Bob called Mosquito Hollow. Ex-250 road race world champion Werner Haas, who didn't get a ride. After Hartz's high-speed crash, the 250 Renmax engine was transferred to Delphin 3, and owing to the increased wind resistance, he was down to a two-way mean of 152 miles an hour. Here comes Herman Muller on the straightaway. With the Quickley revving to 16,000, he made 119 miles per hour over the kilo, and with the 125 developing only 19 brake horsepower, he managed 150 miles per hour over 10 miles on the circular course, breaking Dickie Dale's 350 record on the Wurtz Gutsy. One of the timers checking the wind speed. Bob on the Salt access road leading to the straightaway. He has borrowed Joe Brown's Rapide and is having his first experience of riding on the Salt, topping out at 115 on the Speedo. The bikes have finally arrived. Bob's Rapide to full Lightning spec and Russell's Lightning here on a disused road over the Nevada border. Bob works on the machine whilst Russell watches. Perhaps Bob is reducing the main jet sizes as Bonneville is at 4,200 feet. Here's the Lightning on Joe Brown's trailer in downtown Wendover. It was fortunate that Joe, a Vincent Club member, decided to drive down from Illinois towing his Rapide, as Bob and Russell were unable to find transport of any description in the area. We must also thank Joe for bringing along his movie camera and a couple of reels of colour film. They are here on the Salt for the first time with the outfit, clearly well away from the record-breaking area. I'm sure they are interested to see how the machine responds on this new surface. Since arriving on the 4th of August, they will have 2 weeks to wait before they get their turn on the straightaway. Note the 3 circular badges representing Russell Wright of New Zealand, the Vincent Owners Club in the centre, and Bob Burns of Scotland. Hart stopping at the timer's stand. The overall height is a little over a metre, including the rider. The tail is longer than that of the Vincent, but more on this later. The Vincent streamlining was copied from photos of the earlier Delphin, which had a CD of .29 without hatch cover. Russell posing for the camera with a crown of Castrol R. The 26-year-old family man is a carpenter and builder in Invercargill. The 16-gauge aluminium shell is 3.3 metres long and has a frontal area of 0.51 square metres, compared with that of the Flying Hammock at only 0.23. The previous year, on the wet, narrow 4.5 mile stretch of tram road near Christchurch, Russell took the solo world record with a speed of 185 miles per hour, and without the time to change the gearing, Bob increased his sidecar record to 162. That's Muller in bathing trunks and Hart's with hands on hips. Hart's is coming to the end of a 5-year record-breaking contract with NSU. Both he and Muller are in their mid-40s and on our controlled diets to ensure they can fit inside their respective streamliners. Although the Vincent forks are adjustable for solo or sidecar use, for such a light sidecar and the fact there are no corners to take, Bob has retained the solo trail. As the solo record was the most difficult, it was agreed that Bob would be the first to attempt to beat the new sidecar record held by BMW rider Wilhelm Noll at a speed of 174 miles per hour set on a German autobahn. This is the MG pit where the car is going for a long distance record. The time is taken after the 10-mile circular lap, from which the speed is calculated and put on a board for the driver to see next time round. The car is travelling at around 150 miles per hour, which is a 4-minute lap. George Williams of Castrol is helping Captain Easton with the organisation, as the captain has been ill recently. He has vast experience of long distance record breaking and once took the 24-hour world record from America here at Bonneville. He also has a long association with MGs going back to the very first cars. That's Russell Wright on the left in the white shirt and trilby. Incidentally, the captain and the MG team have offered to help Bob and Russell all they can. Waiting for the car to come in for the pit stop. That curly thing sticking up, that's the driver's canopy. The pit stop takes about 2.5 minutes. When the captain took the 24-hour record in the 1930s, he kept to a similar speed to the little MG around the 10-mile course. Only his car, called the Speed of the Wind, was wheel-driven by an aircraft engine and weighed 2.5 tons. In 1938, again here at Bonneville, he broke the world land speed record with a speed of 360 miles per hour in his car Thunderbolt. This car was driven by 2 Snyder Trophy aircraft engines, was 11 metres long and weighed 6 tons. The car is pushed backwards out of the pit in case of fire when starting the engine. The drivers of the experimental car, the AX179, are John Lockett and Ken Miles. Here you can see the basic seating arrangements on the rigid rear end and the additional steel tubing, including the rollover bar, that the American timers insisted on for safety reasons. This added a further £40. The bright metal coming into view is £60 of lead weighting the sidecar wheel, an FIM requirement. In the foreground is a rubber chin pad atop the fuel tank, from which the rider can only lift his head a few centimetres before his helmet hits the canopy above. The black lightning is a tuned black shadow, and many of the parts are standard. The later sidecar rules require facilities to carry a passenger, although ballast of 132 pounds may be substituted. The V-twin engine has been updated with a stronger picador crank. Bob Burns opened up the big port heads to take 1.5 GP carbs. The extra large friction steering damper knob is in the centre. Revs will be kept below 7,000 on the tachometer. With rear set footrests and extremely low handlebars, much of the rider's weight is taken by the arms and the chin, particularly when slowing from high speeds. The original plywood frame is retained to secure the enclosure. Russell having a look at the new steel framework. It meant a trip to Salt Lake City to obtain some seamless boiler tubing, and after bending was welded up by our cameraman Joe Brown. You can just see the treadless Avon high-speed tyre on the 20-inch alloy rear wheel, only fitted to lightnings and grey flashes, the front being 21-inch. A 36 tooth rear sprocket is used with a sidecar attached, and 35 solo, giving a top gear of around 2.5 to 1. In the final sequence, you'll see the vertical gear lever pushed with the knee, for upward changes only. Bob has brought the bike over from Wendover, as NSU have now finished on the Salt and offer him some runs using their FIM timers. NSU and Vincent's were business partners in 1954 and 55. The NSU mechanics take an interest. The NSU machines are crated up and put on the truck. This will be their final attempt at record breaking. Here's Captain Easton walking over. The Swiss timers have said no. Bob shakes hands to show no hard feelings. Bob and Russell sponsors the mobile oil people in the Green Estate. Joe has brought Bob and Russell over to Salt Lake City for the day. This is the Salt Lake from the west. Bob and Russell have an enormous task ahead of them. Russell, of course, has the biggest challenge of beating the mighty NSU concern who retired from road racing at the end of 1954 to concentrate on record breaking. They had the backing of the German government, who let them use a wind tunnel at Stuttgart University and close an autobahn when they wanted to break some records. As Russell lived 350 miles from Bob, he got little practice riding the machine, and Bob was left to work on it alone in his home workshop. Fortunately, he had the use of the tram road, a quiet logging road leading to the coast, when he needed to test his modifications, which included a cover over the rider, a smaller sidecar wheel, a more rigid crank, a double capacity oil pump, triple valve springs, and a 1/16 of an inch bigger carbs with remote needles, given an unrestricted inlet tract. The addition of 20% nitro was a gamble, as its usage was in its infancy, but if successful, the additional power would help to offset the power loss at this altitude with an unsupercharged engine. Back at Mosquito Hollow, talking to their landlord. Captain Easton has found Bob and Russell some space in this building to use as a workshop. It was formerly accommodation for people working at the airbase at Wendover. Joe Simpson has come over from California for the day. He's helping Bob push the outfit. Russell follows at Bob's rapide. Joe Simpson did a time of 177 miles per hour here at Bonneville this year with his Lightning fitted with a Shore Explorer. They are now on the Nevada side of the border for some runs. Bob astride the machine whilst Joe fixes a binding tacho drive. Journalist Russ Kelly is kneeling on the right with his wife taking snaps. Russ Kelly gave Bob and Russell a lot of help with organising their sponsors here in America. Joe is taking Bob's Rapide for a run. Bob brought it to Bonneville for spare parts in case anything broke on the Lightning. Bob used his machine before he met Russell. In sidecar trim, with full enclosure, and even before the fitting of the big port heads, he achieved 146 miles per hour in New Zealand. This was just 8 miles per hour slower than the world sidecar record held by Wilhelm Bomm on the supercharged NSU. This is the Austin Healey endurance car, powered by the new 2.6 six-cylinder engine tuned to develop 150 brake horsepower at 5,000 RPM. It had disc wheels and Dunlop disc brakes required for a single pit stop. Unfortunately, the new engine proved troublesome. For example, the waterways in the head didn't match those in the block, causing the head gasket to blow. This record-breaking expedition was to give some publicity to the new engine before being released to the public, and when the problems had been fixed, Carroll Shelby set off at 6 AM on the 16th of August round the 10-mile circuit. After 50 laps, Roy Jackson Moore took over, until just 80 miles short of 1,000, the head gasket blew again. A number of records were set, including the 6 hours at 146 miles per hour, with a fuel consumption of 12.5 miles per gallon. Captain Easton. This is the United States Auto Club car, used by the American Timers. Although not shown, Austin Healey had also brought along a high-speed car fitted with a supercharged version of the new engine, developing almost 300 brake horsepower. On the 21st of August, Donald Healey achieved a two-way average of 203 miles per hour down the straightaway. Russell checking over the MG experimental car, the EX179. Beneath that rakish bodywork is the prototype MGA chassis. It has a modified 4-cylinder 1489cc BMC B-type engine designed by Morris and is fitted with a new twin-overhead camshaft cylinder head. In the hands of John Lockett and Ken Miles, this little car achieved 1,000 miles at an average speed of 141.46 miles per hour. It also managed the fastest lap of the 10-mile course at 170.15 miles per hour. Bob and Russell. New Zealander Burt Munro had planned to accompany them to Bonneville with his Indian motorcycle, but had to drop out at the last minute owing to some financial mix-up. This car, the EX179, was also driven here in 1954 and 55. Then in 1957, Sterling Moss would be here in the rear-engined EX181. Here's 44-year-old Bob Burns, who emigrated to New Zealand in 1947 with his wife and young family. He bought his second-hand Rapide in early 1954, and after tuning to the same specification as Russell's Lightning, it was still found to be 10 miles per hour slower. And so they pooled resources and transferred the enclosure as well as the big port heads and TT carb to the Lightning. Then on the 17th of December 1954, Bob broke the sidecar world land speed record with a speed of 155 miles per hour, beating Wilhelm Bomm's record by 1 mile per hour. The freelance photographer in the pink shirt has been taking some publicity shots. They are wearing their Mobil Oil t-shirts for their main sponsors. Here comes Captain Easton. He has offered Bob and Russell some salt time on the 18th, 19th and 20th of August. MG driver and bike racer John Lockett is to assist. They will be using the same timing equipment as the cars, but with their own FAM timer. Here's Bob on a practice run down the straightaway, and watching from the timer stand are the captain and Art Pillsbury, the American timer. Bob has only been using the addition of nitromethane during practice runs in New Zealand. He has achieved speeds in excess of 150 miles per hour without the streamlining. On one run he revved the engine to 7,800 when the clutch drum blew apart. Bob and Russell have sufficient sponsorship, which includes funds from the New Zealand government, New Zealand bike clubs and the Vincent Owners Club. They had arranged to sell their machines to Harry Belleville here in America before they left home. The streamliners make both Hart's NSU and the Vincent difficult to control, particularly at high speeds. This is one of the reasons for coming to the wide expanse of Bonneville. With a naked machine, any side wind acts near the centre, and so the forces on the front and rear wheels are almost equal. But on these streamliners, the pressure changes are near the nose, making it difficult to change direction. The tail fin is supposed to provide just enough lateral force at the rear to counterbalance that at the front.
Joe Brown, who was filming, was also helping with filling up and changing plugs, which meant he wasn't able to get some important sequences. During Bob's first attempt, a piston melted. Following repairs and reverting to straight methanol, he was back for his next run at 10 o'clock the following morning. Bob made several runs over a 4-hour period, but was continually a whisker under 174. As it was now 35 degrees Celsius, he decided to return the following morning. Again Bob failed to beat 174, so in an attempt to reduce wind drag, he removed the sidecar streamlining, leaving a bare sidecar wheel.
Joe Brown is having to screw down the cover as the internal catches are unsafe to use. John Lockett is waiting at the finish to rush up and remove it before Bob melts from heat of the engine. Struggling to rev the engine to 6,000, Bob finally managed a two-way mean of 176.4 miles per hour over the mile. Unfortunately, the timing equipment failed to register the kilo time on the return run, so with only a couple of minutes to go to the end of the hour, he made another attempt, giving him a slower time of 174.6 miles per hour. The large numbers you keep seeing are the distances in miles from the beginning of the time section. At this point, Bob is feeling rather squeamish after little food and sleep for the last 3 days, but after finally breaking the record, all of this is forgotten.
Following Bob's successful morning run, it was now Russell's turn in the mid-afternoon heat, and although it was clear he wouldn't beat 211 miles per hour, he thought he would try for the 200. These film sequences are all practice runs without the cover on, when he managed the best of 179. He wore the soles of his boots away trying to balance the machine at low speeds. Eventually, with the cover in place, he managed a one-way of 198.3, and Russell was certain the bike wouldn't go any quicker. Starting from the 3-mile marker on the return, he managed 192 miles per hour, so after this he decided to call it a day. These shots were taken on the way out of Salt Lake City. There's 500 miles of mountain roads ahead. In early September, using the same timing equipment as Bob and Russell, Johnny Allen achieved 214 miles per hour with his Wright streamliner. Although an FIM timer wasn't present for the Allen attempt, it was later confirmed that the American timer Art Pillsbury had been given authorization by the FIM. Questions were asked as to the validity of the timer certificate, as it didn't make clear whether it applied to complete apparatus or just the electronic component. So the California Institute was asked to make further tests and to issue a new certificate before the FIM Congress in April 1957. The Institute informed the FIM that it hadn't been given sufficient time, and in fact the certificate wasn't issued until mid-May. Consequently, the records were not confirmed. Later the sidecar rules were changed, and Bob's previous record of 162 was reinstated permanently in the Category B 1200cc class.